Why did God speak from heaven in John 12? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of John on Walking Through the Bible. If you have a Bible with you, turn to John chapter 12. We're going to be reading from verses 27 to 36. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So John chapter 12, beginning at verse 27. Now my soul is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour. But for this purpose I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. Then a voice came from heaven saying, I have both glorified it and will glorify it again. Therefore the people who stood by and heard it said that it had thundered. Others said, an angel has spoken to him. Jesus answered and said, This voice did not come because of me, but for your sake. Now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be cast out. And I, if I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all peoples to myself. This he said, signifying by what death he would die. The people answered him, We have heard from the law that Christ remains forever. And how can you say the Son of Man must be lifted up? Who is this Son of Man? Then Jesus said to them, A little while longer the light is with you. Walk while you have the light, lest darkness overtake you. He who walks in darkness does not know where he is going. While you have the light, believe in the light, that you may become sons of the light. These things Jesus spoke and departed, and was hidden from them. The Greeks who were in Jerusalem at the feast had requested an audience with Jesus. When his disciples asked this, Jesus took the opportunity to again teach the disciples that he was about to die. He compared the necessity of his death to a grain of wheat. While the grain remained on the ground, it could produce no fruit. But if it was buried in the ground and died, meaning its outer shell was cast off, then the germ of life inside could use the nutrients of the soil to create a new plant, which in turn would bear much fruit. Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection would produce much fruit in saving people from sin, those who would follow him in faith. Coming down to verse 27, we have a continuation of Jesus' discussion. In verse 27, Jesus' humanity is shown in that his soul is troubled. Jesus knew he was going to die. He knew what kind of death he was going to die, and the agony he would suffer. Dread was beginning to fall over him, as it does most people who know they're about to die. However, even though his soul is troubled, did that mean that he would pray for the Father to save him from that hour? No, because it was for that purpose that he came. This statement here really does bolster my arguments from our other studies that Jesus was not praying in the Garden of Gethsemane that the Father find some other way to save man, when he prayed if it was God's will that this cup be passed from him. Instead of praying this, Jesus prayed for the Father to glorify his name. Jesus had come to do the will of the Father, and wanted the Father to be glorified in all that he did, so he would obey the will of the Father. At the moment Jesus spoke these words, a voice from heaven said that I have both glorified it and will glorify it again, meaning that through the actions of Jesus, the Father's name had been glorified, and Jesus' future actions would glorify the Father's name again. The people who stood by who heard it either thought that it was thunder or an angel was speaking, but in fact it was God the Father. Jesus responded that it wasn't because of him that the voice came. In other words, it wasn't for his benefit, but for theirs, that they might know who Jesus was, God the Son sent from heaven. It was his mission to judge the ruler of this world, the devil, and cast him out of his place. By dying on the cross and being resurrected, not only did Jesus pay the price for sin, he took away any power Satan had over us, namely death, defeating him forever. We thus have no excuse as to why we can't obey Jesus. Jesus continued by saying that if he was lifted up, if he dies on the cross, he would draw all peoples to himself. At that point in time, the Greeks had come to Jesus seeking an audience. Jesus' death, though, would draw peoples from all nations to him, which of course it did. Now this saying confused those in the audience who were listening, for they had some misconceptions about the kingdom that they got from the Old Testament scriptures. What verses had them confused? Well, Psalms 110 verse 4 says, The Lord has sworn and will not relent. You are a priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek. Isaiah 9, verse 7 says, "Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end, upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and establish it with judgment and justice from that time forward, even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this." And then Daniel 7, verse 14 says, "Then to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples and nations and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom the one which shall not be destroyed." The commonality with all these verses is that the kingdom that the Messiah would set up would last forever, and the king would thus reign forever. How could Jesus then be the king which had been proclaimed on his triumphal entry and yet die? Of course, we know that the Jews had a mistaken notion about the kingdom, namely that it was a physical kingdom, not a spiritual one. Jesus did set up his kingdom. He reigns now, and his kingdom will last forever, in that it will even outlast this earth. But it is in heaven, not on this earth. Jesus told the people that the light himself, since he was the light of the world, would only be with them a little longer. Walk in the light while they could. Believe in the light while they could, and they might become children of light, Christians. What will happen if they didn't? They would walk in darkness and stumble. Today we need to walk in the light of Christ if we want to have any hope of heaven. After Jesus said these things, he departed and was hidden from them. Now you could take this to mean that he never appeared again publicly before his crucifixion, making this likely Tuesday. Or it could simply mean that he didn't appear anymore that day, since we do have him speaking publicly later on in the chapter. Whichever is true is immaterial, for it doesn't change the story. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of John chapter 12, verses 37 to 50, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.